Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Jackson and I'm here with Ben and Simon. We're all Microsoft MVPs. We're really passionate about digital workplace employee experience and all of the kind of Microsofty tools in that space. And what we want to talk about today, have a bit of chat about, is hybrid. So there's a lot of conversation happening about hybrid. It's incredibly topical for a while, not sure why, but I'm going to throw to Ben. What do you think about kind of the current commentary around hybrid and some of the challenges we're seeing people complain about, rightly so?
So first of all, let's clear the air and say we're not talking about on-prem and cloud and some version of both of them, because we have a naming clash with the geeky people to say what we are doing. But basically,
we love the geeky people, though.
We love the geeky people. But we're talking about some people being in a shared working environment and some people not being in that shared working environment. And I think it's really driven by people around the world and companies around the world accepting that this pandemic was a thing. Maybe we've hopefully passed the worst of it, and we want to go a little bit back the other direction to closer to where we were before. And that really, I think, is about to introduce this problem of scale. So we've been in this distributed, at least in a desk-based kind of working environment, we've been in a distributed physical environment for a while now, and also distributed from a technology perspective as well. So you are joining a meeting, you are doing work with an internet connection from your house, which is physically and internetly separate from all your colleagues. And as we move into an office environment, we're not so physically separate. And some of us are going to be in the office and some of us are not going to be in the office. And at scale, that's a real problem because of physics. And sound travels, and there's no walls in our beautiful open plan offices, and there's all these fun shared spaces to have huddle meetings and whatever, but we can't have a huddle meeting if someone's at home or someone's working remotely or things like that. So we have to really think about the architecture of our offices and how we use technology to match all of the different working styles that we potentially have, which are just increasing in their number of combinations that can possibly happen. So that's, I think, why it's about to become a really big thing. And we can see players like Microsoft putting a lot of effort into letting people know how to use their technology for hybrid.
Given all of the technology that we do have available now, thank you to the P word, the C word, Simon, is it okay for companies to be like, hey, everyone, come back to the office?
I think it's important that, companies balance that with the sensible uses of flexibility. But it's quite clear that there are places and environments where it is safe and sensible and productive for people to come back together. I wrote a somewhat joke parody post at one point about 3 days a week in the office is the answer. The science proves it. Everyone's choosing that number. Why? Because, a week doesn't divide in half. So you have to pick one side or the other, and they choose 3. But, that kind of dynamic means we're back in I think we are in a place where people are going to be in the office some of the week. Not everyone's choosing the same days a week. Not everyone can get in the office, given health and other considerations. So we are going to have mixes of people participating in work, in and out of work. And that throws up, all the challenges of, do you get everyone to join a Teams meeting to be able to be a part of a meeting, even if they're sitting next to each other in the same conference room? And can you physically do that without creating feedback loops and all the horrors that, we experience when you try and do some of those things without the supporting technology?
I think certainly the technology's come a long way, but if I cast my mind back to the places that I was working, those challenges are not new, right? And for me, a lot of it is, I definitely agree with the need to, again, re-look at how we design offices in a physical sense, in a technological sense, to make sure there's that balance, and just, sit down and rethink instead of trying to, shove everyone into a corner. But, if companies want people to come back to the office, make the investment in teaching them how to use the technology, providing people decent headsets and things like that. Like headset selection projects that I've worked on, we went for headsets that enabled people to have that noise cancelling, so they could sit next to each other if they were, needed to be taking calls at the same time. They weren't disrupted. If you want that from people, you need to provide the tools. Otherwise, it creates tension.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, we know that, and it's not a new problem to have multiple people on calls in close proximity to each other all day. That's what call centres do. And, I think there is a piece of a question in my mind about, are we going to end up with the full gamut of call centre technology supporting every desk in organisations, availability monitors, tracking tools, and so on as well. There's certainly discussion in many organisations about those as a part of this toolkit. But I think that the core of what you're saying, which is have the spaces where people can have the meetings they need to have the acoustic preparation such that people can do the work they need to do, and have the simple things like headsets, like lights, if the light in your office is bad. Those things are things organisations can be investing in and fixing to make this hybrid office environment better, whether you're at work or at home.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the digital workplace is not just a digital concept. Everything to do with your workplace interacts in so many ways, and I think some organisations are just have not, cannot, or they're just not at that time in their journey, using the J word, to have come to that realisation and what needs to be done to make that work. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems of scaling this whole thing is what we used to understand as the informal interaction in the office, which has turned into a technology-enabled interaction. And that's one of the things that I know a lot of people have said, that, we've had this meeting problem for ages. We always had, you could dial into a meeting, you could have meetings in different places, whatever, but we've never tried to make informal interactions into meetings and calls and pre-planned events and all that sort of stuff. I know you've got some sort of features with the status, sort of colours and things like that around the place, which maybe you respect, maybe you don't. But we've seen we will see a real explosion in using technology in contexts that we haven't before. And that's the reason I think this is really different this time around. It's not just a matter of getting some call center tech and sticking it in an office. Like, you really have to think about all those really informal corridor, walking past people, saying hello kind of thing, and putting that hat on and saying, well, how are we going to facilitate that with remote and hybrid and people not being in the same place or being in the same place?
And it puts new demands on people who run meetings in terms of how do you chair them? How do you ensure there's appropriate inclusion across all the people who are on the call, some of whom will have their cameras on and some of whom will disappear into little, circles with their letters in it. How do you make sure those things work in your workplace?
Yeah, and that's a, I've kind of jumped on that because I'm really passionate about that topic in general, inclusion and diversity, and also running meetings and events in an inclusive and diverse way. And some training that I've been running for a client recently was, Teams training. As part of that training, and it wasn't necessarily part of their brief, but for me it's essential, part of the brief for me was doing an upfront thing about how to make your webinar inclusive and diverse and safe. And there's so many things to think about there that are really important to get success and have little to do with technology, but can be. I think, Ben, you said, is it technology enabled? Like we need to be people centric, but obviously we're at a point in time where so much of it needs to be technology enabled, and so you can't give people one and expect them to just get the other.
Yeah. Such a great point, Rebecca.
And I know that one of the things that I think we've all found is when you're new to a piece of technology and you don't necessarily trust how to use it and what it's going to do and how you're going to appear to the people on the other side and all that sort of stuff, it becomes really daunting. Once you're familiar with it, absolutely fine. You can sort of jump straight into a meeting and start presenting and doing all that stuff. But there's definitely a hurdle for showing people how this technology, which is constantly evolving, right? We know as MVPs how much stuff is being released all the time. It's hard to do a snapshot of this is what the product does now and this is what you need to know how to use, because next week it might be out of date. But that side of things as well, like it's a massive education problem and change management and all that stuff that goes with it along the way.
I think, because we spoke about it before recording, but, things like, people sharing their PowerPoint and only not sharing presenter mode. And it bugs me, right? I'll put it out there. It really, really bugs me. Everyone who does it, sometimes I do it for reasons, but also I know, because it's my job to know, that there's always a reason that someone's doing it. Maybe they're doing it on purpose because they want to show it that way. Maybe they're doing it because they don't know a better way to do it. Maybe they haven't had the opportunity to practice. And maybe they just don't know that there's a feature that allows them to easily do it on a single screen. So like behind every rant that I have is also this little voice that goes, but Rebecca, people don't know, it's not always obvious. What do you think about that, Simon?
I think that's exactly right, Rebecca, because, for people who might have not presented it yet in one of these tools, unfortunately, different tools have those buttons in different parts of the screen, and people go looking for different symbols. So there's not necessarily even consistent modes of those things. And, talking about having the right technology, not everyone gets to work on multiple screens where it's easy to do that. Some people are just trying to do the whole world off a single screen. And it can be daunting when Teams takes over your whole screen, and then you go and try and find the PowerPoint you want to present, and it takes over your whole screen. And if you don't understand Windows, or you don't understand how to shift between views or how to leverage the features of tools, it can be a daunting experience. And that's when you get, I've not just presenting the PowerPoint itself, I've had people present their presenter view as an option to an audience.
I haven't had that one.
Oh no, that's going full. Share your presenter view is going full hog.
And I'm really conscious of my tone there. Like, I don't want to offend people who've done this, because I know it happens and everybody makes mistakes and stuff like that. But for me, it's also that how can we help people with those challenges, and what more? I feel that Microsoft's come a long way in the tooltips they provide and their user experience, accessibility and all of this sort of stuff that has been a huge focus for them. But maybe this is a good point to think about, like final thoughts and wrapping it up. But what more can we do? What more can Microsoft do? Or maybe like the internal teams, like maybe IT support teams, what can they be doing to help with the hybrid challenge?
I think it really comes down to this listening and experimenting, and you've probably got, if you're going fully hybrid in your workspace, then you've probably got some sort of office environment that you have to live with. You're not going to move out and move into some other architectural location. So you've got some constraints there. You've got some technology that you're probably not using to its fullest capacity in the hybrid sense. It will have more things along the way, so keep abreast of those news items. And everyone's different. Everyone's going to adapt to this differently, and you're going to have to work with your organisation, its physical constraints, its cultural constraints, and the technology that you got.
Yeah, I mean, mine's pretty simple, Beck, which is invest in the tools that you need, invest in the environments you need for a great workplace, but most importantly, invest in the adoption support. Invest in the kinds of workshops and the efforts you were describing before to help people understand how to do the basics, and also create a coaching culture in your organization where if someone's in a meeting and they're struggling with how to share a PowerPoint, that there are helpful and useful people in that meeting to walk them through how to do it, because that coaching and environment is what's going to get us all through the ever-changing environment and the ever-changing capabilities of this technology.
I think that's a really great place to wrap it up, because I think, us on the call, we all know it needs to be people-centric and that change management and adoption are incredibly important. But also, if this is a new space to you, Microsoft actually provide an amazing volume of adoption resources across a number of their key technologies. Microsoft Teams is definitely one of them. And so you can self-service, but also think about the investment in a professional in that space as well to help you along, to help grow that within your organization. So great hybrid chat. My PowerPoint rant was, I think I didn't go too long on that, so I'm feeling really proud of myself. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Ben, for the chat. And I think we'll finish it up there. Thanks for watching, everyone.